So if the work that you're doing feels too reactive, too messy, or that it relies on everything being in someone's head, then it might not be that you need more time to do the work. It might just be that you need a better system.
This is the B2B Performance Marketing Podcast by Webmarketer, here to help you make the right moves with your B2B advertising. No spin, no smoke and mirrors, just honest insights from the advertising front line.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Maelien.
And I'm Louis.
And today we're talking about the value of having an operational framework behind an ads management program. We've been doing a lot of deep work rebuilding ClickUp, which is the project management system that we use. And that work has actually made us step back and think about what we do, why we do it, and what good actually looks like.
Yeah, it's been really great to go through the process, to be honest. And it's also been a really good reminder of what an operational framework is and what it needs to do. So, for example, for us, it's about guaranteeing a level of work and consideration across the board for every client. Like, if we do these tasks, then we know that we've done a good job. And then every single one of our clients are unique, and so they need a level of unique work and consideration. And when you add that on top, that's what takes the level of work from good to great. So today's episode is all about that, really. How do you build a framework that's prescriptive enough to be consistent and reliable, and then also flexible enough to adapt around the needs of each client?
The first thing to talk about here is the problems that occur when you don't follow a framework. And I think the first one is that sometimes the work can become too custom. You want to be doing work that's tailored and bespoke, and you also want to dive into those details and find meaningful insights. This is the bit that's valuable, and it takes skill and experience. But the issue with doing everything custom is that everything starts from a standing start. If you don't have a plan, a lot of time goes into looking for work that needs to be done. In the moment, that can feel great because you are doing work, you're analyzing data, you're finding things, and you're taking action. All of these are really important, but it's also a really inefficient way of doing things.
So, for example, let's say that someone has a regular slot in their calendar every week to look at ads. Let's say it's every Tuesday afternoon. And that's a good thing, right? Protecting time, like carving out time in the diary, that's only a good thing. But if that session every Tuesday starts with, right, what are we going to do today? You're already starting off on the back foot. You're also having to reload information in your memory that's already a week old. You know, like, what work did I do last time? What data was I looking at? What kind of trends did I see? What filters did I use? What time window was I looking at? Now, hopefully that illustrates that if you're going in cold every time, it means that every task is going to take that little bit longer, and it's also going to be a little bit directionless.
The other thing is, if you're not working to a set schedule, then it's also really easy to double handle the work. You can look into something, take action on it, and then end up doing the same thing next week. So it feels like you're busy, but some of that time you spend is actually wasted.
And maybe there's a way of thinking about this as like dabbling versus grazing. And maybe they're not the perfect words, but I'll try and explain what I mean. So dabbling is like going into the ad account every week or every other week for a longer period of time and for a more intense optimization session. Whereas a grazing approach is more like logging in every day for a much shorter period of time and just monitoring and taking note of what's happening, not necessarily making changes every time, but just keeping a track of what's happening and making changes when you need to. Now, a huge benefit of the grazing approach over the dabbling approach is that you get a much better feel for what makes the ads tick. Which campaigns the conversions are coming from, how the different campaigns are able to spend differently, whether the spend or conversions are coming at the beginning or the end of the month. There's loads of different nuances that you just wouldn't pick up on if you were only looking at the ad accounts once a week or once every other week.
Yeah, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier, because with this approach, you're not starting from scratch every single time. Because with this approach, you already know what's changed recently, you know what needs your attention, and you've got a sense of rhythm for the performance of the account. So when it comes to custom work, an hour becomes so much more valuable because you already know what needs to be done. And this is really where having a framework starts to pay off.
I think it's also really important to say that when we're talking about creating frameworks, we're not talking about trying to create like a cookie cutter approach, like a copy and paste solution. And I've got what I think is a really good story from a few years ago that kind of illustrates why it's important not to do this. So I was training a junior PPC specialist, and we were looking at a new clients campaign that wasn't working very well. So we were working through the data and we spotted that barely any conversions were coming from mobile and quite a lot of spend was being allocated to it. So we turned mobile off, and sure enough, the cost per conversion drastically improved and everything was good. And then a few weeks later, I was looking at another campaign and I spoke to the same person that was kind of training up with me. And I was like, what do you think we can do to improve this? And they said, I don't know, I've turned mobile off and everything, which just kind of illustrates that you can't apply the same solution over and over again. There's no such thing as one size fits all in advertising because you have to diagnose first before coming up with the solution. So back in the early days when we were starting up Webmarketer and we were trying to think about how we productize things, how we turn things into a system, we realized really quickly that you can productize the questions, but you can't productize the answers. So if you look at the same data and you ask the same questions, the answers are going to change. And as a result, the solutions that you apply will also change.
I think the other thing here is proactive work versus reactive work. So if you're jumping into the ad account looking for work to be done, then you're essentially being led by the data because the campaigns are already running here and you're just responding to what's happening. Whereas with a proper framework, 9 times out of 10, you already know the work that needs to be done. So in this situation, you're in control of the ads rather than them controlling you.
And another benefit of being in the ad accounts more regularly is that you're going to spot problems before they turn into much bigger ones. You don't want to wait a whole week or more to discover that your tracking is broken or a URL isn't working anymore or a campaign is overspent or you're running behind target. The earlier you can get ahead of it and communicate it, the better. There's nothing worse than spotting a problem when it's too late to do anything about it. Much better to discover it when there's still time to make it right.
So in terms of how we approach this for ourselves, we weren't starting from scratch. We already had monthly targets in place for our clients. We were already doing weekly reports and monthly reports, as well as strategy calls. And we already had a master dashboard pulling in things like budgets, targets, month-on-month performance, as well as year-on-year performance. So this wasn't suddenly about deciding that we needed more structure. It was about improving the operational layer underneath this. Because our previous setup worked for a while, but it started feeling heavier than it needed to be. There were too many places for things to live. Some of the tasks felt too detailed, where others felt like they didn't have enough detail. And reoccurring work and custom work sometimes felt a bit blended together.
So the main aim was to build a system that was clearer and easier to use. Less task overwhelm, better visibility of what had and hadn't been done, and much clearer ownership, as well as a much clearer distinction between baseline and custom work. So the structure that we've been testing splits the work under each client into these main areas. First off, we've got delivery and reporting, which is where all the reporting and the checking lives. Next, we've got account health and QA, which covers things like making sure the optimization score is taken care of, checking conversion diagnostics, making sure that there are no ads or anything violating any policies. Third, we've got channel optimization, which includes channel-specific tasks, like for search, checking negative keywords, for performance max, checking negative placements, and then overall tasks as well, which are things like making sure that the budget distribution across channels is correct. Then we've got strategic reviews, which is where tasks for our monthly strategy meetings and also internal audits are. And then fifth and finally, we've got custom work, which is where one-off projects go or recurring custom things that we do for clients every month.
It's worth noting here that a framework doesn't need to be super detailed. The most important thing here is that there's a regular schedule that you're following that includes all of the basics. It doesn't need to be complicated. It can even be a simple spreadsheet. The important thing here is that it doesn't all live in your head.
And that feels like a good place to do a bit of a recap. So for me, the biggest takeaway is that a framework isn't there to make your ads management process super rigid. It's there to make sure that a good job is being done as a base level default. Because if certain tasks are only being done when someone remembers, or if there's time, or if something goes wrong, then that's a pretty risky way to manage your ads.
Yeah, a good performance framework gives you peace of mind that the right work is being done like clockwork. And so when you do the bespoke work on top of the basics, this is what takes the work from being good to great. So if the work that you're doing feels too reactive, too messy, or that it relies on everything being in someone's head, then it might not be that you need more time to do the work. It might just be that you need a better system.
And if this episode has made you question how your ads are being managed, feel free to book a coffee call with us and we'd be more than happy to talk it through. Just head to webmarketeruk.com/PPC-coffee-call. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.